But welcome to our first town hall of the autumn quarter. I'm very excited to be here today and talk to you about what's going on at UW Tacoma and find out more from you about what's going on in your neck of the world of UW Tacoma. But I have kind of a robust agenda and quite a few slides to show you, so I'm going to go rather quickly. And I do know that there is an event at 1:15 for staff interviewing the candidates, so you're welcome to stand up and go out of the room and go interview that candidate. That's more important than listening to me. By then I should be done, hopefully, with the comments, and we'll be in the question phase. But what I'm going to try to cover today are these items. I'm going to talk about what's happened since the last town hall, like on June 2nd or 3rd or something like that. A lot of things going on with organizational development here on campus. I have an initiative I want to tell you about. I mentioned in June about educational outreach, getting that off and running. I want to talk to you a little bit about the 2015-2016 budget. That's kind of history now. It's out there and we're operating under that budget. I also want to talk to you about kind of developments in enrollment and the first year experience, very important things for our campus going forward. Talk about the strategic visioning planning process that's you've probably heard a lot about already. And then we'll end at the completion of the slides for some questions and comments from you. So, I don't know if you remember these slides. I put a couple slides up when I was interviewing about what I would be doing my first 1 to 3 months and 4 to 9 months. And I wanted to tell you that that's essentially what I've been doing. I've been trying very hard to establish partnerships with all of you, the leadership groups, with people in our community. I have visited the base. I've actually been to the base 3 or 4 different times. Once I discovered there was Einstein's there, I went there more often. I've also been to the naval base. So this is all progressing nicely. I'm getting around to all those things. And actually, the things I said I would do in the longer term, 4 to 9 months, we're actually doing a lot of that as we speak. You'll see that the strategic planning initiative we're talking about actually engages several of these last points I made. So I've been up to that, but then also you all had in store for me quite a few things that the Chancellor normally does, and so I was very excited and willing to go to those things as well. So I did show up for commencement. That was kind of the last thing we did before a lot of the faculty left for the summer. I don't know if you all went, but it was absolutely a wonderful experience for me. Our community comes out, the students, the families come out. It's just a wonderful event. We were led out by our Grand Marshal, Nina McKinley, our faculty marshal, followed, I don't know if you can see her back there, by the interim president, Anamari. Anamari kind of charged the students forward. Then we heard from Jocelyn, our previous class president. And then we heard from this fella, Charles Kelly Cresso. You probably recognize him as one of our first graduates. He came when we first started in the Perkins building, and because he only had a few credits left, he graduated almost immediately. So he spoke to our graduating class. It was an awesome event, and I really liked what the newspaper did. They put all 1,651 of our students' names in that picture. So if you haven't looked at that, go back and look at that closely. That was pretty cool. The program was beautiful. It was silver in our anniversary colors. The whole experience was wonderful. And now we have 17,530 alumni out there. Another absolutely awesome event was the soiree, the 25th anniversary soiree out on the Prairie Line Trail. In addition to being beautiful setting, the people were fantastic. The community really came out. It was a fun event. We started at one end of the Prairie Line Trail with hors d'oeuvres and light drinks. And we moved to dinner in the middle. And by the end of the night, even Harlan and Josh were dancing in the streets as we ended the evening about dark. So it was a great event. We had our own board chair. David Zeke was the MC, and the chef, Gordon Nacarano, is that how you pronounce his name, made a wonderful speech about the food and his story and all that. So it was a great night. Another really fun event, and it was Paint the Park Purple. And this slide's kind of purple. That's what it looked like at the ballpark. It was an outstanding event. There was, I think, the largest, Tom could tell you if he's in here, it was the largest outpouring of alumni and community members that we've ever had at this event. And I could tell it was all purple. The Rainiers did their part, and if you stayed to the end, and a lot of times situations like this, you don't stay to the end because it was pretty dismal. It was 6-1, no chance, we didn't think. In the bottom of the last inning, they came up 7-6. So it was a great night, but you know, my favorite part of the night, I have to admit, was the opening pitch. And I looked at these slides that Cody put out, and I noticed a lot of similarity there. So that was actually my favorite part of the night. Another really big milestone for me, and you might notice a theme here, if I go back to this event, well, not that event, to that event, see, 25, you start getting the ideas. And this event, we also held on August 25th, and you'll see another event on September 25th, but I had a life goal. I've been running for 37 years, and I was approaching 25,000 miles. I've had that goal for about 20 years. And I could tell that it was going to happen right here in Tacoma sometime in August. So I kind of staged my running for a couple of weeks. We put it on the map, and my good friend Derek Young over here did a lot of help organizing it. And we ran 3 miles on campus. We ran across to the Museum of Glass, down along Foss Waterway, and then back to campus, around campus, and finished. And you know, I kind of expected that people like, you know, Tyler might be out front and Cindy right out front of there. Maybe even Nicole, but who would have thought Brian Goda would have been right there in the front? Is Brian in here? Way to go, Brian. Brian surprised us all. A lot of people ran. We had a lot of fun, and I got to know a lot of people I wouldn't have known any other way. Another event, and this one actually happened on 9/25, so we didn't miss 125 over the summer celebrating, was the unveiling of the W. It was also a pretty exciting event. We went to the Swiss, kind of kicked off some comments, and we went over, and our own Cody Char and Harlan Patterson dropped the purple veiling of the W. It was a nice event. And you know, I talked to the Board of Regents last week, and I mentioned during my comments that I thought it was an inch bigger than theirs. And I noticed when we took everybody up to the Y, the president and provost stopped, and I think they were measuring to see if it really was an inch bigger than theirs. So we got them worried now. And then, of course, the convocation happened. The convocation was another very heartfelt event. I was very impressed. We had 3 different groups, one from Broadway Center, one from the Museum of Glass, and another group came from the Y. We kind of converged on the steps, came down the steps. It was a really fun, exciting, to me it was inspiring to charge the students for the next year. And the only negative thing is I had to kind of close out the celebration of the 25th anniversary and say we're going to get on with our 26th year. So you can only stretch a party for so long. But it was a great event. We were charged, no, actually not charged, we were blessed by Mr. Sterud, Bill, I think is his name. He's the chair of the tribal council for the Puyallup tribe. We're actually on their lands. He did a wonderful prayer at the beginning, blessed us all. He also gave a few words for our colleagues in Umpqua Community College. It was a really inspiring event. We also heard from David Bowe, our deputy mayor, and we heard from Sophie Knopp, our class president. It was a really good event. Now, I also have to admit, this was the official stuff I was doing, but I couldn't be a real human being if I didn't do unofficial stuff too, so I was doing some of that, so I'm just going to give you a quick idea of what I was doing unofficially. Well, I did have to go out and see what the wine country looked like at Lake Chelan. It looked fine. I went fishing for salmon in Commencement Bay, but I caught 2 sharks and 5 flounder, and I threw them all back in. That was a little bitty shark. I did partake in the U.S. Open, although I've never been to a golf outing. I've never golfed in my life, but I have to admit it was a really exciting event. I got caught up in it. This shot here was what's called Moving Saturday, and the leaders were coming down. I think this was Jordan Spieth, Justin Johnson, is that his name? Justin Johnson? Dustin Johnson, and a couple of other people that were right in the lead coming down, and we didn't know what was going to happen the next day, but these people that we were right by ended up being right in the thick of things afterwards. Another thing I did is everybody told me about the Central Cascades and Northern Cascades. So I went over to Leavenworth and took a hike. This is Cochuck Lake, beautiful up there. I believe that is Cochuck Peak, and this right here is called Dragon Tail, and it's like the Agard Pass or something through there. And there were a couple of young people that were up there at the same time I was with my friend, and they were getting ready to walk the rest of the way around the lake over that pass down to their cars somewhere else. Myself and my friend, we just walked back down to Leavenworth and had a bratwurst and a beer. But it was a great view. I had no idea how beautiful it was up in central Washington. Likewise, right here in our own backyard, I went across with a different friend that came. That's another thing that happens when you move to Washington. Everybody comes to visit you. Kelly and I have had 8 sets of visitors since we lived here, either single people or families. In most cases, families coming to visit us, and all of them want to do something fun, but that's also fun to do. So I went up to, I've actually been to the top of Mount Eleanor twice, come face to face with the mountain goat this particular day, and you could see Seattle, you could see Mount Rainier, you could see everything up there. It's not far from here. If you haven't been, you should go. And then what's a summer without going to a Mariners game? I bet you can predict who won. Not the Mariners, but it was fun. And then I told you about lots of people visiting. I'm just going to take one more minute and show you about my favorite visitor, and that was my grandson. This is Ari, and that's my son Ben, my middle son Ben. This is Ari at Owens Beach I got the privilege of putting his feet in the ocean for the first time, and you can see he's kind of backlashing. He can't talk yet, but he was saying, "Grandpa, don't put my feet in that water." He was digging into those pebbles. And of course, he went over for an exciting day at the zoo. You can see how much he saw at the zoo, but he's got his UW purple monkey and his parrot in there with him. And then I also took him to Fort Nisqually. I don't know if he enjoyed that or not, but I enjoyed it. And then I wouldn't be a proud educator unless I took him to Squinomi Library to study some Latin. So when the librarians weren't looking, I set him up on the table and took his picture. So that's kind of what we've been doing over the summer. And now let's talk about the real reason you came to learn what we're doing on campus here. Well, we have a lot of things going on that have to do with organizational development. One is going on as we speak, and that is our search for the Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. And I can't say enough about the work that this committee has done. A lot of folks said, "Oh, you can't put a committee together and have them work in the summer. That's too much pressure." But they did an outstanding job. They jumped right on top of the task. They worked very hard with our consultant to build a very robust pool, which I got to see the pool. And we were happy that the pool had candidates in there who could be a great vice chancellor for us. So we went forward and they selected 5, actually selected 9 first to airport interview, I think the 20th and 21st of September. Pretty aggressive schedule, but airport interviewed them, selected 5, got those approved by me. We went forward, and within a week or 2, they're all here. Also, we have quite a few dean and director searches moving forward. The one that's kind of out front first, that we've already charged the committee, is IAS, and we're using Storbeck Pimentel as the consultant for our first 2 searches, which is Milgard and IAS. As I said, the search committee has been charged, and they've met with the consultant, I think October 6th. At that time, the consultant met with the search committee chair, Cheryl Greengrove, and the assistant, or the co-chair of the search committee for the Milgard search. That's Isan Feroz. Am I saying that correctly? So that is just about a week behind. And then we're still working on the other 2 searches, education and the institute. We have an RFP that is going out. It's gone out, or did it go out yet, or it's about to go out? It's done? It's out. It's gone. So RFP means we're sending it out to those same consultants, and we're going to evaluate them on which ones we want to use for the next searches. So that's all going as planned. It's a lot of work, I know, and you told me that, and I agreed, and I'll be cautious of that work. We got them staggered a little bit, so it's a little easier on the campus. Also, we've established the cabinet. Before this autumn, we were operating the campus primarily with the vice chancellors and myself, a great group of people, but now we have a full cabinet to enlarge the perspective, get more eyes and ears on the decisions that we need to make as a campus, and we've had 2 meetings already. They are The vice chancellors, Sharon, who's our assistant chancellor for equity and inclusion, Lisa Hoffman, she's a professor of urban studies and assistant to the chancellor for special projects. Her title has changed a little bit. She was special assistant to the chancellor for community engagement, but I changed her title, and I'll tell you a little bit about that more in a minute. But she's on the council, on the cabinet, as is Marcy and Mark. They both represent the faculty assembly, and all of them are not here right now because the faculty assembly is actually interviewing our vice chancellor candidate as we speak. So I'm going to be talking to the faculty assembly about the material we cover in here on Friday to make up for the fact that they had a conflict today. And then we have Robert Hardy, who was elected by the staff council to be their representative. And tomorrow we're going to find out who our student representative is on the council. So I'm excited about that. We've had 2 meetings without our student representative there, so we'll have a full cabinet by the next meeting. Another thing is Professor John Buck left this summer. Is that his name? Banks. Yeah, Buck. John Banks Buck, we call him. Okay. I only got the chance to meet him once or twice. But anyway, he left this morning. He left this summer for California, and that gave us an opportunity to look at what we do in international studies and global affairs on this campus. We have several different offices touching our international students and what we do globally. I thought it'd be a good idea to bring some outside eyes in to take a look at this before we move forward and do whatever we're going to do. So I talked to my colleague at Seattle, Jeff Ratinger, who is involved nationally in International Officers Association, and he suggested these 2 people who both work at urban serving universities. The University of Michigan Dearborn is more the size of ours. I know IUPUI is a lot bigger than ours, but one of the reasons I was interested in Gil is he used to work at Portland State, which is an institution that we kind of aspire towards. So both of them are very well versed in international studies. They kind of direct those initiatives at their universities. They're going to come for 2 days. We're sending them a list of questions. We've already sent them a list of questions. They'll be here. We're putting their schedule together now. We're completely open in who they can meet with, but we want to get them in front of as many people as possible and then go away for a couple of weeks and give us a report on some suggestions, recommendations for us moving forward. So that's going on. I apologize for this drawing. You might recognize this. Where's Lisa? I saw her in here. We brainstormed in the conference room the other day, but one of the things that I'm launching is an educational outreach initiative for this campus. And I talked briefly about it at my town hall in June, something I was involved with at my previous institutions. And actually, I think it's been very timely because of some of the requests we've had from the military bases, and most recently, I don't know if it's noise or just an uncertainty in federal way about higher education in their community. So I think it's an appropriate time for us to think about mobilizing ourselves to meet some of these needs that actually can't come to our wonderful campus here. So I'm going to initialize that, get it off and running. What we think we'll have, and we actually have a position description, is an assistant chancellor for for educational outreach. And right now it would report to the chancellor. Eventually, I think it would be best reporting to the vice chancellor for academic affairs. But since I worked in this field, I would be happy to mentor that person as our new vice chancellor gets on board and attacks a lot of the problems they'll have on their, opportunities they'll have on their plate when they get here. But essentially, this position would oversee some initiatives we already have on campus. We'd just coalesce them into one unit that faces more outward, and that would be our conferences services, our key bank non-credit operation, which is already running. Something I'll call, and it's parallel to key bank, is our credit outreach, which we don't have too much right now. We have some fee-based programs in Milgard. But I think as we go forward, we might have more programs like this that are outward-facing and serve an audience wider than just this campus. So those would all be a unified organization. The conference services, of course, would still support the work of advancement. All those special events that we do on campus, they'll need to be, deputized and to help that group. So it's a little bit in flux, but we are going to go after this person sooner rather than later. A timeline, if we can get the search position out this fall or this autumn, maybe we can hire them at the beginning of the year, have like a soft launch, give them time to formalize this structure, and then 1 year to put the policies, procedures in place, and then maybe 2 years from now actually expect self-support revenue to come back from this organization. So that's kind of enough about that. We could talk more about that later. Also, another initiative is to have a campus budget committee, a committee that informs the executive budget responsibilities of this university. So the idea is that we would have this very shared governance type committee that would span the campus. I'll show you the positions we want on that, that would inform and give advice to the budget process based on these inputs that come at us all the time from the state, from the flagship campus, from our external stakeholders, from the strategic plan that we're working on. All this would inform this committee, which would give advice to the schools and programs that need to move themselves forward, to the other non-academic units, the administrative units. Those would then come through the appropriate vice chancellor to the executive budget committee and a recommendation to me, and then I'd be accountable to make the decision and to be accountable to the rest of the people for why we made the decision we did. So my vision is that the executive budget committee continues to be the people who are charged with executing the budget for the university. We have 5 different administrative units on campus. So those people, along with Jan Rutledge, who is our budget guru on campus, we need her to inform us. And then also, I believe it's important to have at least a faculty representative even on the executive budget committee. And then we have our larger strategic information guiding steering committee for the budget process. And again, this is draft, but you can see it's a much wider representation of the campus. A couple people from the staff council, a couple people from faculty assembly, a couple people from student government, diversity and equity is represented there, as is community engagement. I have alumni up there that may or may not work. Research would need to be there. All these things that affect the campus budget would be represented on this committee. Now, since we don't have a strategic plan, the work of this committee would be a little difficult this year, but we're going to initialize the committee anyway. I anticipate maybe one meeting this fall to kind of get the budget 101 down, have Jan and the people in the budget office talk to us about how it all works, what the cycle is, and then maybe a meeting or two in the spring to learn about what's going on in the strategic plan and inform the process. So we kind of get our feet wet this year and then get a well-oiled budget, campus budget committee in the future. Budget development for this year, as I told you when I came, I couldn't influence that much. It was already in process and it was kind of in the hands of the legislature. I think we came out pretty well. I know we came out well with our Urban Solution Center, or the Tacoma Paper and Stationery Building. We got the $16 million. Woohoo! It's wonderful. We also got $1 million from soil remediation, which is an ongoing activity that we have based on the history of what used to be here. So that was great. And I also believe the budget process was good. You know, our stakeholders are our students, and the students and families of this state did get a break. They got the tuition lowered, but that means we get less money coming to us. Now, one good thing that happened this year is the state legislature kind of backfilled that budget process. In other words, they didn't let us have to absorb that budget or tuition reduction all at once. Now, if you really get in there and look, which I didn't, but Janet and her people have looked, it might not all be exactly there, but they made the effort to try to backfill that gap, so to speak, for this year. Now, our provost, who is in charge of the budget for all of the units at Seattle and the 2 other campuses as well, us and Bothell, he was good enough to backfill and make whole for this year any money that was missing. So essentially, we got our budget for this year. Even though the tuition is cut, we got that money put back in there. Okay, now we didn't get all the raise money. We are having 3% raises, but we didn't get all that, but we got most of that money back in here. Now the story isn't quite that positive for next year. For next year, the state authorized 1.8% of the pay, but right now Seattle and the rest of the people are talking about possibly a 4%. Again, this is just preliminary. So there would be about a 2% gap missing there that we would have to come up with ourselves. And there's no guarantee, probably some doubt, that the state would do that. In fact, the state will not do that. And we don't know yet if the provost office would do that. That's a big chunk. So anyway, we have to be very conscientious of our budget and how that's tied to enrollment in the coming years. And we'll talk about that in a second. But let me kind of get through the slides quickly. So let's look at what affected our budget this year. A lot of these things were in process, but one thing that will affect it is we're looking for a Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs. That would be a faculty appointment, so we would have another faculty in the ranks because of that. If we finish and are successful in all these deans and director searches, that would add 4 faculty to our ranks. We did authorize 3 brand new tenure track faculty positions to meet the needs of our growing program portfolio. We did carry forward several tenure track positions that failed last year, and we also had some retirements that we're replacing. And then the competitive lectures were put in place, at least 13 FTE of that. So that represents quite a few new faculty FTE that we'll have to pay for next year. And then also in the budget process, we did authorize some staff positions as well. There was a process already ongoing when I got here that people were putting forth requests for new budget positions, and I kind of jumped in right in the middle of that. And you'll see that I did put the Assistant Chancellor for Educational Outreach in there. Now these numbers over here are salaries and benefits, so don't get alarmed that these are high salaries. Those are salaries, benefits, and everything. So we have added several new positions. We tried to keep it down to a value or a total amount that would fit in to our student enrollment tuition increase for the year. And we did a very good job, I believe, of not stretching ourselves past the money that we'll bring in. But that's why I showed you the previous slide. That matches where we are right now, but going forward, it's not going to be quite so easy to do this kind of thing. Important position here is something we've been in need of for quite some time, career development. I've heard that since I've been here, so we did authorize a full-time position in that area. Okay, now I know you're tired of looking at this slide. This was that slide I showed you, and it was animated, but the good news is this slide is quickly becoming history, and Mark's strategic plan is now becoming our strategic plan. I couldn't be more excited about this, but we've hired a consultant, Kathleen Deacons, who's actually here today. Thank you for coming, Kathleen. She is the CEO of J-Ray, and J-Ray is known by their red chair. I need to find out someday what that red chair is about. But very capable, very knowledgeable of our institution. A community member, was on the advisory board of a previous chancellor. So we're glad to have her. And I'm even more thrilled about the 2 wonderful chairs that we have. Bonnie and Richard have been wonderful, a delight to work with. I don't know where they get the time that they have devoted to this project, but they squeeze it out of somewhere. So I thank them for doing that. And they've been co-chairing this process, which is well underway. We've had at least 2 meetings. The people on the committee can tell you they had a lot of reading assignments. This is the committee. There are 30 people there. It's a big committee, very representative of campus. But I want you to know that it's not that committee's plan. It's not Kathleen's plan. It's not Mark's plan. It's not Richard and Bonnie's plan. It's your plan. So I have to charge you to get engaged with that. And we're going to work very hard to do that, because I don't want you sitting around idly not being engaged with our strategic planning process when that's going on. You know about it. We'll tell you more about it. We'll tell you where to be, what time, all those kinds of things. We just won't tell you what to say. That's up to you, and we'll listen to what you say. But the process is co-created. This was hard for me because, I had a plan for our strategic plan. I had my circles and all that kind of stuff. But what our consultant said, and I think why she got the job, we had some great consultants we interviewed, but she talked about co-creating the process as you learn about the people who are involved in the process. Like, duh, that makes a lot of sense. Why was I coming here saying, this is what we need to do? So we're co-creating that process as we speak, which has some disadvantages as it too, because we're just thinking of things on the go. Sometimes we might give you the impression that we're making this up as we go. That's because we are. It's the process. Okay? Also, we want to have complete transparency. There's a website somewhere. Oh, it was the previous slide. There's a website. Everything is on there. All those reading assignments that they had, everything that we do, agendas for the meeting will be on that website. So stay tuned to the website. A lot of stuff is on there. We want it to be collaborative, inclusive, engaging, meaning you have to talk. You have to come and engage with us. Tell us what you're thinking. The first phase is answering the big question. What do we want to be in 25 years? What do we want to be when we grow up? We can't do the rest of it until we decide on that. Do we want to be, the best urban serving institution in the Pacific Northwest, in the world? Do we want to change what we do and become, a super community college? Whatever it is that we want to do, we're asking that question, and that's going to set our sights then on the path to get there, because the path will be different deciding on what we do. So again, it's your strategic plan, and I want you all to feel like it's your strategic plan, because I'm going to ask you, I've told you lots of times, I'm going to ask you to help me accomplish that once we decide what it is. Also, I had these slides before. I think it's very important, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, that we get the enrollment necessary to accomplish this, but we want you all engaged in that enrollment development process. And all of this is going to cost more money, so we need this strategic plan to inform us on our future resource development, including our philanthropy and our campaign, which will launch next summer. So let's talk just briefly about the enrollment. And I don't know if the enrollment officially came out. I did see an email this morning, but it should be official by tomorrow. I think we stopped counting on Friday, and it should be official by tomorrow. But in autumn 2014, our enrollment was 4,501. I changed my slide about 10 minutes before I came in here because I saw the email. But the projection this year is about 4,631. Carl's not in here to shake his head, and I don't see Cedric either. Oh, Colleen's here. Is that correct? Yeah. But tomorrow it'll become official, right? Or is it official? It's official right there. Okay. So my slide's official. I feel proud. So we based our budget and our moving forward kind of on 4%. We talked about this before. Deborah had initiated a 7 and 7. In other words, we were going to be 7,000 students by 7 years from that time, which is 2013. That required something more aggressive than 4, so we've cut that back a little bit to give the campus time to catch up to 4%. But with the actual budget situation in Olympia being what it is, and with the goals of our upper administration to provide a 4% raise for people, 4% may not be enough. We need to think through this as a campus, and I'm afraid we may be scaring people away that might be excellent students for us. So I've charged Bill, and he's going to engage Cedric and the campus community, faculty leadership, student leadership, and get us all engaged in looking at our enrollment development kind of in parallel to the strategic planning process. I don't think we can wait. Same thing for a couple other initiatives as well. Now, if you want to go to the staff interview, please go. So that's happening now, and we may decide on something other than 4% going forward. We may decide it's 5%, 10%. We may decide to go less, to decrease enrollment. I don't know, but I'm thinking we need a plan for our enrollment going forward sooner rather than later. Last slide, I believe, is just some other critical things. Anytime you launch a strategic planning effort, the tendency is, whoa, let's wait and not do this, let's not do that until the plan's done. There's a lot of things on campus that I don't think we can wait for. I just mentioned the enrollment development. Another thing is the question about should our programs be schools. That's something we need to answer sooner rather than later. The education program put their proposal forward to become a school, and I was given the feedback that we can't do that until we know what our plan is for campus for all the programs. Once you know what your plan is for all the programs, then we can consider education and urban studies or what have you. So we need to wrestle with that right away, and I've got Bill working on that as well. We need a cross-functional strategic enrollment plan. I already talked about that. We need this campus budget committee and Jan and all the people on campus, the deans and directors, to engage and talk about budget development, and Harlan as well this year. We need a solid plan for the first 2-year curriculum. We've been wrestling with that and have really never solved that completely. It's very important to get that done. We want to, once we get the students here, we want to ensure their success. And I know different areas are working on this. We need a coordinated effort to get that solved sooner rather than later. And then you saw the email about the Race and Equity Steering Committee. That group has been a little bit dormant in the past couple of years. And with our new interim president engaging all of the 3 campuses in this dialogue and with the issues we have on our campus, I think it's very important that we keep that initiative going. I know many of you have nominated people to serve on that steering committee, and Ricardo Ortega in the back of the room there, he's going to work with those lists and engage the community and charge them to move forward. So that was a little more than I anticipated, but now you have the whole story. So I'll entertain any questions you have. Would anybody like to ask any questions? If you would, we'd like you to come up to a microphone. Hello.
Oh, there it is. This is a sort of addition. There's a lot of stuff here to think about and digest. Just one additional thing that we could be thinking about this year is, I get there are not a lot of faculty members here, so maybe this is informative. There's a campaign going on to unionize faculty at all 3 campuses. And just background, years ago when we first formed the campus, I remember asking our first chancellor, do we have unionization rights? And he said no, which wasn't true. But what we didn't have was a state law that said that if the faculty voted to unionize, or if the students, graduate students did, that the administration had to bargain and recognize. And so that's happened with graduate students. They did organize, and the university did recognize them and bargain with them, and those graduate students are doing quite well as a result. Because of all the budget cuts and things, this has been sort of building up for the last 10 years among faculty, as almost all the other faculty in the state of Washington have unionized. Our campus, and I think it's Eastern, is the other one that haven't, but all the other ones have. And they've done it mainly to try to protect the university, which has to do with all the issues that we're all concerned with, I think. And the reports from that are all very good and positive. So the only thing I wanted to say as a concern here, in the last month, we've had 2 letters from the president's office raising concerns about faculty unionization. And it's a concern to me and other people. We think a lot of the things that were brought up are inaccurate, misleading, and so forth. But the real problem is that as faculty members, we don't have that equal access to. The president can send this out, everybody gets it. We don't have that ability to do that. So then we're sort of left, just a few of us talking to each other. So at our campus, we've always had a pretty good open line for faculty members to talk about things. So I would just say that I hope that will continue, that we have the ability. It's a faculty decision. Some of the discussion since these 2 letters came out was that according to state law, it's the employees themselves that are supposed to make those decisions, and the employer is not supposed to try to persuade people one way or the other. So I certainly wouldn't ask you to take a position on any of it, but simply that we would like to make sure that we have open communication among faculty. And I don't know what we can do about the whole UW, because the president's office, I don't know, I guess we can request them to allow us to make those same kind of letters to the whole faculty, but I don't think it'll happen. So I guess just to boil it down simple, this will be going on all year long, so I just hope that on our campus we can keep a very open, friendly, congenial discussion, and it's something for the faculty to decide. I don't think the faculty know what they think about it. as long as we keep it a real open process, it'll work out fine.
Well, Professor Honey, thank you for bringing that up. Just before I came in here, probably 20 minutes ago, we all, at least all of us faculty, got an email from Norm, and I don't remember Norm's last name. He's the current Faculty Assembly President. Anybody know Norm's last name? Okay. He's the chair of radiology. Anyway, he sent a message to all UW faculty saying that this year, in fact, the next couple months, they want to have this dialogue with faculty, being able to talk about pros, cons, but have the dialogue so people can make an informed decision. And it is a decision for the UW. Our campus can't do something differently than Bothell. So whatever we do, and you're correct, it's a faculty decision. Only faculty can vote on this, and it would be against the law for me to persuade faculty in any way, shape, or form on their decision. So it is a faculty issue, but it's an important faculty issue. And I don't think our faculty should be asked to vote on it until they dialogue about it. So we can't control when the ask happens. The process is already going on. So I would encourage, and what I did with that message is I sent it to Marcy and Mark Pendris, Marcy Lazari and Mark Pendris, and said, can we engage our faculty in a discussion on this campus? Whatever their opinions, get them to talk about it so they're not surprised. Because if we do vote on having a union, or not vote on, if we sign the cards to ask for a vote, and then if we have the vote and the vote is positive, then we will have a union whether you voted for it or not, or whether you had a discussion or not. So I think it's important. That's why I'm asking everybody to get involved with the strategic planning effort. You need to have your say before you have your do, so to speak. You need to say what your opinion is. So I applaud you for suggesting that. I think we should have a discussion.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's, I know Marcy and Mark were probably in the interview and didn't get my email, but they'll get it sometime today. And we don't have to have these discussions today, but soon. Yes. Professor Isham.
So I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to the community engagement initiative. I understand that the position is changing, but in the 3 years that we've had it, I've known it to only engage one community, and that's been the military. I mean, it's important, but so are many of the other communities, and I just would like to hear you speak to what's going to happen with that office and whether or not other communities that are also important to our campus will be engaged.
Yes. Well, thank you for that question as well, because I actually forgot to continue discussion on there. All I did was talk about the position, the leader we're going to recruit, and didn't take the time to talk about the rest. Essentially, I called it community engagement at the beginning when I first got here because of my history. When I was at Purdue University, I had a position that we called, it worked in the office of the Vice Provost for engagement, but really in the UW system, this position that I'm referring to here is educational outreach in UW lingo. So that is not exactly the same as engagement. It's a form of engagement when you take your programs out to the community or invite them in for a conference. It's a form of engagement, but not the all-encompassing. Our campus is all-encompassed in its engagement activities. And that's something I need to address as well, is because I don't feel like that we have the full support that our faculty and staff need to completely engage the communities that they serve. They do it anyway. But as we ask our faculty to increase their scholarly productivity, or we ask the faculty to increase engagement with students in their classes, retention initiatives, whatever, we have not provided the full spectrum of support they need to make their job easier. So one of the things I did is I invited a group of our faculty and staff to go with me to the Scholarship of Engagement Conference this year. We just went last week and actually gave 3 presentations. One of them was with our military partners, but the faculty and staff were able to go to sessions on professional engagement activities, not necessarily faculty, but staff engagement people who support the work of the campus. So I realize it's something we need to do on this campus. It's a high priority. We also need to work with the culture so that our faculty get credit for their engagement going forward. So this position won't address it all. It's just a start. Okay? Thank you. Another question. once. No question? Well, thank you all for coming. I'm very pleased that you were here today and enjoyed talking to you.